So welcome to this Autumn Internationals video supported by Sports News Blitz. We're going into the final round of matches. I say final, there is one more after that. We've got Ireland versus Australia as an outlier, but pretty much the final round for each of the countries. I want to talk about where they're at right now and what they need to get out of this final round to have a successful autumn. And if you haven't already, it's one of your last chances to play my starting lineup. What you've got to do in this game is try and guess the exact starting 15 before the official announcement. If you get it exactly right, 1 to 15, you go into a draw to win Six Nations tickets. Now, I was chatting to Glenn Webb, the former Wales winger. He runs this game, and I was asking him how many people go through to the draw, and I can't tell you the exact number, but it's not that many. If you get it right, if you have the right intuition, you've got a great chance to win Six Nations tickets. I would love for one of you guys to win that. So if you do, when you register, please put in the code RugAN1 to tell Glenn I sent you, and good luck. That's for England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. See if you can get it right. So let's talk about France versus Argentina first. Haven't been able to do a France match report. 3 or 4 match reports is my limit at the weekends with family life and all that sort of thing. But I watched that game against New Zealand and it was absolutely phenomenal. 2 great teams going at it, either deserving the win, but France, that lethal counter-attack, so much pace, getting a big scalp at home against the All Blacks, and it would have been a good World Cup final. It was that sort of game. Really exciting. Now, Argentina were inspired in the second half against Ireland and a bit standoffish in the first half, and that is what Argentina are like. When they're on it, they can beat anyone. When they're off it, they look like they're going to lose really easily. Now, that kind of was the stereotype reserved for France. What sort of team's going to turn up? These days it is Argentina. Now, France will be big favourites for this one. They expect to win. If they lose, it would make the autumn a bit of a disaster, actually. If Argentina lose, then it would be like, OK, it's France. Maybe we shouldn't have won anyway. As long as they can put in an 80-minute performance, I think they'll be OK. If France do get that win, I think they then go into the Six Nations as favourites because Ireland's 2 performances have been a bit lacklustre. Argentina, of course, suffered that phantom knock-on to lose against Ireland, which none of us have seen. Has anyone seen that knock-on? Certainly plenty of comments in my section saying it didn't happen, so let me know if you saw a replay or saw it in the match or you were there live. Love to know that, but they'll definitely feel like they were a bit mistreated there and they can get one back, so expect them to be fired up. It is whether they can emotionally stay on it for the full 80. Then on to the Irish themselves, up against Fiji. Ireland have a point to prove. Can they be the green machine for that full 80 minutes, or is it just going to be in patches? Have they fallen off a little bit their high standards? They've been full of mistakes, full of penalties when under pressure. And Fiji, they are a serious side now. And finally they have a world-class halfback pairing. Lamani and Muntz, absolute quality. They can kick, they can run, they can do the full thing. And now they've got a core of Fijian Drua players. Their systems are better, their set piece is better. They could absolutely win. This is a big game for Ireland. That ridiculous pace and power we see got rid of Wales. Now, despite all that Fijian power, Ireland will be expected to win this one, and probably convincingly. If they don't, if it's anything short of that, I think there'll be some questions whether Ireland need to rejuvenate a little bit, change some of their older players, that sort of thing. It's worth noting that after these autumn internationals, Ireland are going to be without Andy Farrell because he becomes a Lions coach as of the Six Nations, and they're not going to have him. So an interesting period here. Let's see how they do against Fiji. A bit of pressure, I think, going into that one. Wales versus South Africa. Now, for a couple of years, I've joked that the Welsh fixture secretary is a bit of a sadist, and I think this confirms it. This lineup of matches is so tough for this team trying to reinvent itself. They now face South Africa. After the Wallabies got the power edge on them, the last thing they need is these monsters in green coming at them. A win for Wales, it would be incredible. I think a more realistic goal is to keep it close, keep it competitive, and I think then you can talk about maybe some positives coming out of the autumn. Warren Gatland, after that game against Australia, looked a bit defeated, and to me, from what he said, I don't think he'd mind if the WRU gave him the hee-ho, he went off into the distance, he'd given it his shot, he's tried lots of players, it hasn't worked, and maybe no one could have done any better. But I think maybe he's happy if his time is up. We will see what happens after the internationals. But first, South Africa, and I think it's fair to say that South Africa's team cohesion has been poor. Against Scotland, it was poor. Against England, it was really bad. Loads of mistakes, loads of penalties, but they've got so much talent in depth. they're good enough to win these games. And it's also worth noting that Raz Erasmus changed loads of players from the Scotland game to the England game, trying to build that experience in depth, and they could well be at their best in this game. I mean, we did see them at the end of the Rugby Championship with a total rugby performance. It was seriously impressive. Could we see something like this? I think it's due, and I think Wales could be on the end of it. So could be another painful night for Wales. Big pressure on them, big pressure on Warren Gatland. Now on to Italy versus New Zealand, and even though New Zealand lost to France, still plenty of reasons to be happy with their progress. Although I think there are some players, maybe like Ratimer, like Rico Ioane, who've got question marks about their place in this squad, but that's always going to be the case with the All Blacks. But plenty of talent allowed to express itself. I think they may well make some personnel changes here, but they have to expect a big win. Anything less would be a disappointing finish for New Zealand. Then on to Scotland versus Australia. Now in Scotland's summer fixtures and last week's game against Portugal, they're trying to develop players a lot in 2024. My guess is in this match they'll be back to their first choice, or pretty much, trying to finish that year on a high. This is probably my pick of the round if it is that first choice Scottish team. They didn't execute their attacks versus South Africa, although they did stand up physically pretty well, although it didn't show on the scoreboard. But I think Australia posed a different question as well. They certainly moved the ball a bit more. They offloaded the ball a lot more than South Africa did. So yeah, a different challenge defensively. This could be a really high scoring match. I think more pressure is on Scotland for me because Australia have got those big wins against England, against Wales under their belts. Scotland, no doubt they've got the best attacking backline they've ever had. Pretty happy with that statement, although they've lost Jack Dempsey in the forwards and they need his carrying. Now, just like Wales, Australia have given themselves a really hard fixture list. England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland, so they've got 2 more to go. If they beat Scotland, then a dream clean sweep is on the card, so they'll be up for that. This could be a really exciting game. Then we've got England's last game against Japan. And it's kind of a lose-lose for England. I mean, they've never lost to Japan before. Japan haven't really improved under Eddie Jones. They're still decent, still stayed at a good level. They've got some great players. I think outside centre Dylan Riley is the sort of player that England would need there. And they play hyper fast, they move the ball around, they offload. They're going to stress England for sure. But in the past, England have managed to squash them physically, defensive pressure. And this is a big test for that defensive press. If they get it right, if they stop the offload, they get man and ball, they could really give Japan a bit of a beating here. But if Japan get those passes away, get round the edge, we can see England scramble isn't particularly good. Because of that press, they're out of position. So for England, they really need a dominant performance to claim they've made progress in the autumn. For Japan, it's a shot to nothing. So those are my takes on these games, on this kind of final weekend of rugby. Let me know all your thoughts on those games down below, and I'll catch you next time.